children, driving up our national debt that we are going to have to pay back. That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
The government's irresponsible spending is turning us into slaves. You might well literally lock us into chains, at least our children.
We got to deal with this big long-term debt problem, or it will deal with us.
And it is
I'm asking you, join us to stop this fiscal train wreck. Join us to protect our children from an inferior standard of living, from a crushing burden of debt and taxes.
Okay, I don't believe in any of the tax cuts. I didn't want the tax cuts for rich. I didn't even want it for the middle class. Okay, because you know why? Because it puts a $400 billion hole in the budget, and we just can't afford it. And as we discuss deficit reduction, which is clearly a major issue.
For decades, we have piled deficit upon deficit, mortgaging our future and our children's future.
The deficit thing is real, and the debt thing is real. We are really in trouble, and it's something.
Is there need for comprehensive deficit reduction? The answer is not only yes, but hell yes.
This debt that hangs over our head, a government that spends more money than it takes in. That's not sustainable.
You cannot cut taxes or increase spending unless you can pay for it.
The math of federal spending does not add up. And we are spending money we do not have. A debt burden that's crushing us.
To me, this is more of a moral issue. You can't steal from your kids and grandkids.
Deficit. We think the deficit and the national debt are at a moral level.
National debt is America's biggest problem.
In 1971, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. Gold was what we backed our currency with. Now, we no longer are on a gold standard. Back in the day when we were on the gold standard, there were these bank runs. People would freak out and they would pull all their money from the bank, and there was no way to buffer. There was no way for us to absorb any shocks to the economy. So you would see, if you look before 1982, because it took from 71 to 82 for us to figure out how to work monetary policy to keep inflation relatively stable. And it has been like stupid stable, like Big Ben stable since 1982. But between 71 and 82, you had this wild swing of inflation, right? And I see people, it's the petrodollar. No, it's not. No, it's not. They didn't understand how to balance out federal money and how to keep the interbanking dollars at such a level that they could maintain inflation so that it was like, you know, when you're riding in a car and it's got really bad shocks and you're like, that's what the world was like before they understood how to work within a sovereign fiat currency. Monetary theory, modern monetary theory is not a prescription. It is not a rule. It's not a law. It's not something to be done. It's not something to enact. It's not something that is a new policy or program or a new currency system. It's not anything new. It literally is. It is a description of what is today. Now, the problem, many people try to make MMT say things that it does not say. Modern monetary theory describes federal financing. It describes currency at all times. And as of now, right this minute, MMT describes a sovereign fiat currency.
I have met with progressive Democrat politicians over the past 25 years. And when we start talking about budget deficits, you know, they completely understand that a sovereign government is not like a household. They understand that there's no necessity to balance the budget over the course of a year or ever. But they say, look, I can't say that in public.
There's nothing to prevent the federal government from creating as much money as it wants and paying it to somebody. The question is, how do you set up a system which assures that the real assets are created, which those benefits are employed to purchase? So it's not a question of security. It's a question of the structure of the financial system which assures that the real resources are created for retirement.
You create the reserves.
Yes. And so, I mean, is that printing money? Not literally. Not literally.
Okay, folks, that was the video that we played at the beginning of my presentation at the Green Party annual meeting in New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey. And I want to talk a little bit about my experience there. But before I do that, I do want to try to bring on the PowerPoint presentation that I did yesterday so that you can see it in much more clear fashion. Hopefully it shows up much better. It's very difficult to see, but I want to make sure you all hear this. And then I'm going to talk about my reception there, the level of interest from Green Party leadership and understanding how to fund a Green New Deal, et cetera. And hopefully this is eye-opening. And then we're going to talk about how to take this message forward, because I'm literally done fucking around. I am done playing around with people. I have worked my ass off round the clock for years trying to get to this point. And folks, I'm done suffering. Seriously, I don't mind suffering as long as I know we're working towards something, but I'm not okay with suffering just so people can get 2 minutes of fame. So give me 1 second, I'll bring up the presentation. So I think that you guys understand that in order for us to be able to enable a Green New Deal, we have to be able to understand how to pay for it. So the title of this is Modern Monetary Theory, The Future is Now, Enabling a Green New Deal. The agenda we put together was to have an introduction, discuss some common misperceptions, myths, legends, and lies, describe what modern monetary theory is, talk about why economics is vital, not just something to do, but vital to our movement. Not just their movement, our movement. Enabling a Green New Deal, folks. This is the unifying policy prescriptions that both Jill and Bernie put forward. Determining barriers to acceptance and then actually taking action. So first of all, I thank the Green Party for allowing me to come speak. There were approximately 25 people in the room. None of the Green Party leadership attended my presentation. I'm grateful beyond words for those that did. So let's just move forward. So my introduction, who I am. My name's Stephen Grumbine, founder of Real Progressives, and I'm a program manager by trade. I'm a father of 9 children, 5 boys and 4 girls. I'm a former Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, and now a non-affiliate MMT-driven progressive. I supported Bernie Sanders during the primary and Jill Stein during the national election. My education, I have a Master of Science in Technology Management, a Master of Business Administration with focus in international business, Graduate Certificate in Strategic Management of Technology and Innovation, Bachelor of Science in Information Systems Management, an undergraduate certificate in IT project management, and an associate's degree in general studies from College of Southern Maryland. I'm formally a project management professional, a Cisco certified networking professional, a Cisco certified design professional, and a Cisco sales expert. And, in case you were wondering, I love the Grateful Dead. So why I'm here? Too many myths and legends surround economics, and it prevents us from achieving our goals. Our government finances are nothing like a household budget. The mainstream economic narrative offers zero hope. The mainstream economic narrative is a lie. There can be no Green New Deal using the economic storylines of our oppressors. And bottom line, we need a Green New Deal. I need a Green New Deal today. And knowledge of modern monetary theory is the way to make it happen today. Not 20 years from now, not 30 years from now, not 5 or millennium from now, while we're sitting there greening a dollar, while we're overthrowing the system, while we're doing all these other things. People are dying today, and it is the epitome of entitlement, privilege, when you go ahead and you ignore that fact. So the problem statements I'm going to address. The national debt is unsustainable. It's a lie. We must reduce the deficit. That's a lie. We have to raise taxes to pay for stuff. That's a federal lie. If we just cut spending here and there, we can afford this and that. Another lie. We must eat the rich for inequality and fair share and stuff. Another lie. We must balance the budget. A Mongo lie. We do quantitative easing for the 99%. Another fibberoni. We must end the Fed before we can have a sovereign currency. Possibly the biggest lie of them all. So what is modern monetary theory? Modern monetary theory is currency analysis. It's a precise description of how our system works today. It delineates the difference between currency issuers and currency users. It precisely describes the money creation process. It describes the U.S. as a monetarily sovereign nation with a free-floating, in other words, it's not pegged to a commodity like gold. It's non-convertible, which means you can't demand gold on conversion. And it's sovereign and it's fiat, meaning that our government is the sole issuer of it, and it's a fiat, meaning by decree. The United States government is the sole issuer of its currency. Demonstrates that the U.S. can never, ever have a solvency issue, and it demonstrates the availability of real resources and not paper or keystrokes to contain a currency issuing nation's ability to spend on what it needs. Real resources, folks. And so over here, the meme that you guys have grown to know and love, Real Progressives MMT 101, federal taxes do not fund federal spending. Our nation is self-funding, which means we can't go broke. That means we can solve poverty, hunger, climate issues, green energy, universal health care, free K through 16 education, trade school for all, a federal job guarantee plus basic income or expanded Social Security, which is my preference, student debt relief and paid family and medical leave, among a million other things like infrastructure, high-speed rail, you name it. Some notable economists, which are not exhaustive, and activists built in here. Dr. Stephanie Kelton, Randall Wray, Bill Mitchell, Pavlina Cherneva, all have been on Real Progressives. Ellis Winningham, Joe Firestone, Rohan, Fidel have all been on Real Progressives. Stephen Hale, Nathan Tankus, John Harvey have all been on Real Progressives, and will continue adding to that. So one of the key things that we find is this misunderstanding of what taxes are really for. And this is a direct cut and paste from a great write-up speech that Beardsley Rummel, who was the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, wrote in 1946. And you'll notice one thing. At no point in time does it say to pay for stuff. Not one single one of these four things are saying that taxes pay for stuff. In fact, the title of this was called Taxes for Revenue or Obsolete. So number one, as an instrument of fiscal policy to help stabilize the purchasing power of the dollar. In other words, to drive currency, to drive demand. To express public policy in the distribution of wealth and income, as is the case of the progressive income tax and the state taxes. In other words, we can use taxes to help facilitate income distribution. And number 3, to express public policy in subsidizing or penalizing various industries and economic groups. And number 4, by the way, number 3 would be considered what we call Pigouvian taxes. And number 4, to isolate and assess directly the costs of certain national benefits such as highways and Social Security. In other words, we're trying to make sure that we're setting the price so that the industry understands what the price for these things is. And that's the government being the sole issuer of its currency. They're also the monopoly issuer of currency. They're also the price setter as the monopoly issuer of that currency. So federal taxes do not fund spending. Favorite tweet of my life, Stephanie Kelton blessed me with a simple one-word response to the question, do federal taxes pay for anything? And she succinctly stated, no. And then she provided a link, which we've provided several times, and I'll probably provide again soon, that backed that up. It was written a while back, where she basically broke it down in spades so that not one soul on the planet could escape the fact that taxes don't fund spending. And yet here we are in 2017 with tons of people within our own movement, particularly in the Green Party and the Democratic Party, and independents who have bought into the Alex Jones, wrong Paul narrative. They believe that somehow or another they do. So the United States government is monetarily sovereign. In other words, it's king of the buck. It is the creator of the dollar. It is the price setter, as I said. And because of that, it can never run out of the currency it issues, US dollars. So stop panicking. Thank you, deficit owls. This right here, the common lie, the narrative that the national debt is unsustainable. Okay, first things first, the debt is merely the sum total of untaxed dollars from the moment our nation came to be. It's actually our national assets. These are treasury bonds, savings accounts, minor interest-bearing accounts. If China owns treasuries, they get US dollars. If they dump those treasuries, that means they spend them on US goods and service. Econo boom. But look at this chart over here. For all the horribly misled people that erroneously have the audacity to talk about paying off the debt. Let's take a look historically at what happens when the fools get what they ask for. 1817 to 1821, 29% of the debt was paid off. Just 29%, folks. And within 2 years of starting that, the Depression began. In 1823 to 1836, we paid the debt off. Guess what? The year after that, a depression began once again. Then somebody else got all up into it, thinking they were going to go ahead and eradicate the debt from 1852 to 1857. 59% paid off. Guess what? At the end of it, a massive depression. 1867 to 1873. You know, these are the good old days these fools harken back to. 27% debt reduction. The same year, massive depression. 1880 to 1893, 50% debt payoff. By 1893, a massive depression. 1998 to 2001, 13.6% of public health was done. Year depression began, folks. I can tell you right now, you all lived through the great financial crisis. You know exactly what happened. That was Bill Clinton's balanced budget surplus that caused most of it. Yet people worthlessly say that it was the Bush tax cuts because they don't understand economics. Isn't it terrible when the illiterati force you to defend W? So we must reduce the deficit. Public deficits are private surplus by accounting identity. Folks, that means every time they say they're reducing the deficit, they're reducing your and my cash in hand, our ability to survive. So think about it like this. Federal spending equals, adds money to circulation. Federal taxes equals removes money from circulation. In other words, if somebody wants to say worthlessly that federal spending is just printing money, then they worthlessly should understand that it means that our federal taxes are unprinting the money. Federal cutbacks plus federal taxes equal we are destitute. That is austerity in a nutshell. We lose. It is a horrible situation for everybody that's not flush with money. So straight from Warren Mosler's Soft Currency Economics, thank you, Deficit Als again. Modern money theory, government fiat money necessarily means that federal spending need not be based on revenue. The federal government has no more money at its disposal when the federal budget is surplus than when the budget is in deficit. Guess why, folks? Because taxes are freaking deleted and all money is keystroked into existence. It's all new money. So total federal expense is whatever the federal government chooses it to be. There is no inherent financial limit. There is no freaking limit. Every single person that's ever said it has told you a lie. The amount of federal spending, taxing, and borrowing influence inflation, interest rates, capital formation, and other real economic phenomena. But the amount of money available to the federal government is independent of tax revenues and independent of federal debt. How many lies did that clear up? Reducing the deficit is just freaking gibberish. We just had Professor Bill Mitchell on the show the other night, and one of his great quotes, budget deficits in a sovereign floating currency never entail solvency risk. In other words, we can never go broke. A sovereign government spends by crediting bank accounts. In other words, keystrokes. And it can never run out of such credits. In other words, it can never run out of keystrokes. And then a really great meme over here. I'm not sure where it came from, but I wanted to use it. How can this replicator work without raising taxes? Quite simply, Congress authorizes the spending and new dollars are generated. Once the truth about MMT was realized, we stopped endlessly debating about how anything is paid for. The deficit is just the annual difference between government spending and tax receipts collected and resets to zero every single freaking year. God, there we go. We have to raise taxes to pay for stuff. No, we don't. Lady named Lana talking to Stephanie Kelton. Well, what does pay for federal spending then? Stephanie Kelton. Congressional authorization triggers the payments. After that, coordination between the Treasury and the Fed ensures clearing. In other words, government checks don't frickin' bounce, and they don't require a tax dollar to spend it. Anybody get this? Are we ever going to get this? Do we all need to die from a climate disaster or some sort of fiasco because we don't have health care because you're entrenched in desire only to tax? At some point in time, somebody needs to step up and be a real progressive and stop peddling the lies. Well, Lana was kind enough to say, thank you. And that's good. If we just cut spending on this and that, like the military or this or that, we can afford stuff. Liar! The U.S.'s monetary system since 1971 works like this. If Congress decides to spend, then money gets spent. It doesn't matter what tax revenue is, how big the debt or deficits are, how investors feel, or how much interest gets paid. For federal government checks do not bounce. The money just gets spent, and it's all from keystrokes. Want to know why? Learn MMT, friends. Learn modern monetary theory. Stop allowing the people that don't do their freaking homework the space to get away with saying lies that kill people, murder people. destroy lives. Every one of these people has blood on their hands. Do not forget that. So if we just cut spending on this and that, we can afford stuff. Sectoral balances is this next part. And this wonderful graph right here was made by Pavlina Cherneva. There's an updated version of it that came to me after I did the presentation yesterday. I didn't have time to add it to this, but that's okay. You get the point. Bottom line is, whenever you see a private sector surplus, in other words, you and I have no money, and you see the recession immediately follows, okay? And you'll notice that what you've got are government sector surpluses. And ultimately, when the government is in surplus, as you see right around Bill Clinton era, the government killed the economy. And that, my friends, was the beginning of the end. Private sector went into a deficit, recessions March 1st through November 1st, December 07 through June 09. Folks, when will we wake up? So the sectors, private sectors, credit cards, student loans, disposable cash, public sector, congressional spending, treasuries, surplus deficit. Rest of world, are we a net importer? Savings and tax avoidance, leakages. Folks, the next lie that you hear all the time is about money growth causing inflation. Oh, if you print money, it'll just cause inflation. Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, all the other lies that you hear, right? Let me tell you, every single one of these quote unquote hyperinflations had nothing to do with printing money. That is the liar's route. That is the side of the economic illiterate saying things that ultimately kill people. What it was caused by in Zimbabwe, we'll start there, was Mugabe went ahead and took away all the farms and agriculture from the white farmers. They burned the fields down, they destroyed it, and they had no ability whatsoever to produce anything. So they had buckets of money, and it didn't buy them anything because they had no product, they had no real resources. They couldn't survive. That's why. Weimar, guess what happened with them? These folks, they had debt denominated in a foreign currency, aka French francs from the Treaty of Versailles. Okay? Their productive capacity had been eliminated because of those sanctions and because of the war. They were still recovering from World War I. Get this. They had no productive capacity. So the shelves were bare and people were fighting over a grain of flour. And they were bringing bucket loads of cash because they were competing for who could get that single nugget of chicken or chicken nuggets. There you go. Anyway, the United States does not have such problem. We have insane amounts of productive capacity that is left furlough intentionally by our government that predicts that we need a certain level of unemployment that allows us to not use our resources, and therefore we are absolutely underutilizing and we will never be able to regain lost productivity. And I'm not talking about productivity for the man, I'm talking about for our own existence. It doesn't always have to be the capitalist view of this. Sadly, people with very, very, very entrenched religious socialist beliefs and other people that are of the LOL Austrian variety will sit there and make up stories to fill in the gaps. They are liars, they are incorrect, and their ideology is getting in the way of them hearing truth, and that is killing our movement. We must eat the rich for inequality and fair share and stuff. Notice the little girl off to the side, gazing off to the future, pondering what that common narrative means. Well, Stephanie Kelton Savat kicks that to the friggin' curb because we are a monetarily sovereign nation and we are able to do it and we can make the rich irrelevant. Let me read to you what she said. Dem lawmakers are obsessed with trillions stashed offshore because they think they need to find the money. Find the frickin' money, damn it, when we are monetarily sovereign. They keep saying this lie. Find the money to feed a hungry kid or fix our freaking planet. This is both cruel and unwise. Why pretend that our power to care for planet and people rests with the so-called billionaire class? It doesn't. It fricking doesn't. We can fund Pell Grants, Social Security, Medicare, infrastructure, child allowances, a federal job guarantee, etc., without their money. Without a single penny of their money, we can do it. I mean, if you really want to neuter these guys, in other words, make them irrelevant, sideline them, why not show them how inessential they are and just fricking do it? Instead of treating them as a repository for the headstones of the progressive agenda, which they do over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it is sick and it's unacceptable. It is time that progressives in the Green Party, progressives in the Democratic Party, and human beings with a brain stop lying. The lie is done. It is lethal, and it is why we are going to perish from climate disaster. It is why we will go without single payer. It is why we will never have free college. It is why we will always have student debt hanging around our necks, because people worthlessly continue to press this narrative, and it is going to end our ability to survive. Friggin' survive. That is sick, and it is evil. Let's just do quantitative easing for the 99%. No, it doesn't work that way. Student loan debt is at $1.2 trillion as of 2017 and climbing. Congress alone controls the purse strings. We do not have personal accounts at the Federal Reserve. We do not have those accounts. It would require Congress writing a bill that would authorize spending to eradicate those debts. So individuals would need an account at the Fed to be quantitatively eased into prosperity. So in other words, it's not happening. It's a lie. It's not true. And it's sad, because this is one of the most important parts of the Green New Deal that needs to be done, but it's not being done. Why? Because they don't understand economics. Sadly, they do not understand economics, but this could not be a more vital policy program, but they need to learn how to pay for the damn thing. They need to learn how to make it happen. And sadly, they don't. And they refuse to listen. They didn't show up to the presentation. There wasn't a single Green Party leader in the presentation. They were not interested in being at the presentation. So we need to make Congress act on its powers to ensure that we eradicate the pain first. By the way, that guy holding the gun to his head, that's students. That's the people that feel hopeless. That's the folks that are destitute, that see no way out, so they're willing to end their lives. We must end the Fed before we can have a sovereign currency. Liars, not true. Government checks do not bounce. The Fed sent record $97.7 billion in profits to the U.S. Treasury in 2015. Folks, if we owe the Fed all this money, why in God's name did the Fed send a record $97.7 billion in profits to the U.S. since they operate the Fed at no profit? Can you explain that? Of course you can't. Because the Alex Jones conspiracy theorists that have infiltrated the progressive movement don't know their ass from their elbow. They repeat a bunch of stuff about 6% and stocks and nonsense, but they just use the terminology that we know today. They don't understand the fact that this is just basically membership to the system. It could be wiped away without any issue whatsoever. It was enacted by our Congress. There was no hostile takeover. There's none of that. It's a lie, and it's killing people. It's lethal to America. So the Fed is a creature of Congress, like I just said. And let's be fair. The reason why I take such a strong stand against the end of Fedders is because, let's be fair, how long does it take to get a bill passed? How long does it take to get people on board? We can't even get people to understand that we don't dig gold out of the ground to pay for stuff. Okay? We still can't get folks to understand that we're not on some petrodollar. Okay? We can't get folks to understand that we can afford everything. They're going around looking to cut shit. So why in the world would you think that we could suddenly end the Fed, put a new money system in place, change everything we've ever known, and suddenly the next day have a Green New Deal? Folks, it's a lie, and that's the problem. It can't happen that way. And if anybody's honest with you, they'll tell you that there's no intention because they can't afford it with ripping the system apart. Otherwise, they're just adding to the debt if they do that, right? Right? Anyway, MMTers like Dr. Bill Mitchell and Warren Mosler have gone on record as being willing to move the scorekeeping of the Federal Reserve operations to the Treasury. But it's largely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Fed acts on Congress's word. When Congress writes a law, the Fed makes deposits. When Congress refuses to write laws, then the Fed doesn't make deposits. If you don't understand this, you're conflating monetary policy, which is the Fed's edict to get price stability and full employment, and you're mixing that with the Congress's role, which is to spend on the 99%, which it does not, but it sure as hell finds ways to fund every single bomb we drop around the world. So start using your brains, folks. It's time to get ready to action. So the question is, and I present this to all Greens who follow the Green Party and anybody else who follows various startup independent parties or anything else. The question is, are you willing to put the environment, healthcare, student loan forgiveness, infrastructure, green energy, and the rest of the Green New Deal on hold while you shift around who keeps score at the Federal Reserve? Are you willing to let that many millions die without healthcare? Are you willing to take a chance the planet is uninhabitable? Are you willing to let people commit suicide over crushing debt that they're using to subsidize the training, education, and development of these companies that refuse to pay for kids' student loans? Lives are far more important, folks. I'm telling you right now, they are far more important. And over here, this little meme to the right, this is from Roger Malcolm Mitchell, who is not an MMTer, but writes about monetary sovereignty that is a very close cousin to modern monetary theory. And what he says is a monetarily sovereign government has the exclusive and unlimited power to create its sovereign currency. Monetary sovereignty is the foundation of economics. The United States is monetarily sovereign. It has the exclusive, unlimited power to create the dollar. China, Canada, Australia, the UK, and Japan are also monetarily sovereign. They have the exclusive, unlimited power to create their sovereign currencies. The government, the US government, created the dollar from thin air. By creating from thin air all the laws and rules made by the dollar possible. Being sovereign over the dollar, the US can do anything it wishes with the dollar. It can make the dollar equal to 3 euros, 2 pumpkins, or 1 partridge in a pear tree. The federal government's power over the dollar is unlimited. And that goes for all the other ones that we just sat up there and said too. China, Canada, Australia, UK, Japan, all have that same thing. However, let's talk about something that's not sovereign. Illinois, Cook County, and Chicago are monetarily non-sovereign. The dollar is not their sovereign currency, and they do not have the unlimited power to create dollars. France, Germany, and Italy are also monetarily non-sovereign. They're part of the Eurozone. So the life cycle of a dollar. Congress signs a bill that authorizes spending. The Fed marks up accounts, creating new money into the Treasury. The Treasury disperses payments as required. However, eventually that money is taxed. And when it is taxed, it is deleted from the balance sheet. If congressional spending is printing the money, then taxation is the unprinting of money. A federal dollar is only spent once by the government because taxes are deleted. So there is no, we need taxes so we can pay for things. Anyone that says that is blatantly, brazenly lying. Okay? The information's there. To not understand this part of it at this point is an act of intellectual dishonesty and laziness. So spending is filling up the tub. Taxing is draining the tub. Unemployment is literally draining the tub. And inflation is the water leaving the tub, overflowing. Environmental racism is something that is there as a direct result of austerity and, quite frankly, bigotry, etc. But I think more to the point is just the fact that because of austerity and because of this fake crisis that we put ourselves through, we allow the government to ignore the conditions of the inner city, to allow them to ignore the conditions of the hood, so to speak, or the these various areas where you've got lots of generational poverty. And like Flint, Michigan, throughout our nation, we have made choices, financial choices based on austerity that directly impact vulnerable communities. Folks, this must end. And it ends once we understand that it's unnecessary, because once we understand MMT, we can fully fund the states. We can help make sure there are no unfunded mandates, and we can ensure, in fact, that the federal government serves its purpose of protecting and actually taking care of the general welfare of the nation. Folks, we are facing grave environmental consequences. Do you think we've got time to screw around with greening the dollar, ending the Fed, coming up with a new policy, new monetary policy, destroying the U.S. government, overthrowing it, turning it into something we really love and like, and all at one time before we ever have a Green New Deal? I don't think so, folks. You look at this massive iceberg breaks away from Antarctica, an iceberg weighing 1 trillion tons. Folks, shit's getting real. Yet there are still people out there that would rather talk about ending the Fed, greening the dollar, and austerity. It's time, folks, to wake up. No more letting people die for your fetish. No more. So we are facing grave environmental consequences. Do we have time? I think not. Another picture right here. Reduce our carbon footprint. We must take immediate action. But how will we pay for it? Taxes are deleted. So a proactive approach to green energy conversion, perhaps, by federally subsidizing or outright paying for it, to go ahead and retrofit every smokestack in the world. I don't care if we really are facing mass extinction, if we really are facing a climate crisis that we may not be able to survive, if water is becoming scarce, even though we've got these huge oceans, we got to do something about it. And if taxes are deleted, why in God's name would anybody with a brain suggest that we got to pay our fair share for healthcare? We got to pay our fair share for the environment. We got to pay our fair share. Why in the world are they not just doing it? Do they just want us to die? And I'm talking about the progressives in this world. I'm not even talking about the plutocracy or the oligarchy or any of the other parties. I'm talking about within our own midst, the so-called revolutionaries. Federal investments into renewables needs to happen today. We need to directly pay to retrofit fossil fuel-based products and those that use them for manufacturing and transportation. Money is not an object, but we can't be reborn. We can't bring the earth back. We can't make it inhabitable once we're all dead. And folks, that's where we're heading. Even though it may seem crazy, all you have to do is look at that picture one more time, one more picture of that right there, that iceberg breaking away, to know shit's happening and shit's getting serious. So let's talk about unemployment killing. while we're in the process of trying to save lives, why don't we talk about a federal job guarantee? Folks, we've got so much work out there, it is unbelievable what can do. We're talking about serving your local communities, helping the children, helping the elderly, helping create art and bring art back. The arts have vanished. We have become friggin' stationary people with computers and sitting there chilling, when in reality we have forsaken the arts, we've forsaken the public purpose. 45,000 people commit suicide every year over unemployment. Jill Stein spoke about an employment office in every community versus an unemployment office. What's stopping us? Why is it that the UBI crowd would block a federal job guarantee? Why would they do something that would lead to murder and death? Why would they do something so evil, so economically illiterate, so unthoughtful? There is a solution, and it becomes the bedrock of the economy and destroys the stranglehold of neoliberalism. And that is a federal job guarantee that forever eradicates involuntary unemployment. It would be locally administered, which means that it would appeal to Republicans. It would appeal to the Green Party's new platform amendment 835. It talks about local economies and local co-ops, etc. It would be public purpose driven and federally funded, meaning the government that doesn't require your tax would fund it. It would allow everyone to survive and thrive, and eliminating the financialization of the misery the average person faces when they're out of work. I don't know if you've ever been fired or laid off, but let me just tell you from firsthand experience, after losing a 17-year career at Verizon, it is extremely painful. And yes, suicide does come into your mind. And some people, it goes beyond that. Some people actually go ahead and do it. And it was 100,000 million% avoidable. Federal job guarantee eradicates involuntary unemployment and income inequality. It doesn't eradicate income inequality, but it prevents it from being exacerbated. The antidote for neoliberalism. Job guarantee critic. Anything worth doing is a perm government job. MMTers. That doesn't address the problem that the job guarantee solves. Involuntary unemployment. The critic. Stephanie Kelton once again. She's replying to a Scott Santons. The goal of full employment at this stage of technological progress, of self-driving vehicles and artificial intelligence makes zero sense. What a frickin' dipshit. Stephanie Kelton. Good to have this on record. MMT supports the goal of full employment. UBI, the goal of full employment makes zero sense. Spot on, Stephanie. So in conclusion, we are not on the gold standard, and thus the constraints imposed are no longer in play. We have a sovereign, non-pegged, non-convertible, fiat currency not backed by oil, gold, beeswax, or chicken necks. The Fed is a creature of Congress, not a frickin' private banking cartel. We aren't broke and can never go broke without an intentional act of Congress. The debt ceiling is a garbage construct that is used for politics to force quote unquote tough decisions, aka neoliberalism, and is a relic of the gold standard era. The national debt is not like debt as you and I know it at all, but is instead savings accounts at the Fed for people who want to save in US dollars. A balanced federal budget would in fact make us like Greece by taking away our ability to deal with the shocks to the domestic or global economy. And federal taxes do not fund spending, but they are essential to maintaining the value of the US dollar. Taxation allows the government policy space to provision itself. Full employment comes before inflation, and money growth absolutely does not in any way cause inflation. Too few goods, too few real resources? Yes. Too much money? No. That makes the people liars. MMT basics. Federal taxes don't fund spending, so that means our nation is self-funding, which means we can't go broke, which means we can solve poverty, hunger, climate-related issues, green energy, universal health care, free college, trade school for all, a federal job guarantee, paid family and medical leave, student debt relief, you name it. Once you get that, then progressives can unite. We are only constrained by real resources, but folks, if you don't get this, we are absolutely screwed. And then I asked for questions, and that's when the fun just started. So, let me just tell y'all, my time there yesterday was very exciting. I was very proud to be representing real progressives at the Green Party annual meeting. I drove, it took me almost 4 hours, no, so closer to 5 hours to get there. It was 4.5 hours to get there. I had no air conditioning in my car, and I raced by myself flying because I stayed up all night long the night before and worked my tail off every moment I got to try and get viable stuff into that slide deck and to prepare for actually doing the presentation. It took me another 5 hours the same night to get to my mother's house in Washington, D.C. I then worked from home there, and then I got my taxes done, and I drove back to Harrisburg, PA. So I have driven probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 or 14 hours, got very, very little sleep. And I did it all because it was that important to me that I go ahead and present this information to the Green Party. They have a great program, folks. The Green New Deal is wonderful. Bernie Sanders' platform was wonderful. You combine the two together and you've got the progressive platform. It's only missing the economic component, and that's what Real Progressives is here to give you. MMT, modern monetary theory. You understand it, you win. We win big, but we don't, unfortunately, because, and this is a very sad truth, conspiracy theorists in our midst are more fun. They're more committed to idiocy. They're more committed to a lie than the people that know the truth. And that's got to change. That's got to change. Sadly, not a single one of the Green Party leadership came in to our session. Not one. I saw David Cobb outside. I was very hurt that David didn't make it in. I felt like this was one of those things where he needed to make it in. I felt like others, when I watched them get up and leave, it made my heart hurt when I saw them leave before we got started. Then, when we were finishing up, we got a late start because the people before us got a late finish. There was a gentleman that came in and kept mumbling about what stupid stuff we were doing and how it was just a stupid theory and nobody's got time for any stupid theories. I was very, very heartbroken. But let me tell you, there were many, many people there, not in leadership, that were very interested in what we had to say. They were very, very interested in enabling a Green New Deal. Sadly, right now, I'm watching not only the Green Party, but I'm watching Democrats, and all of them are shooting shotgun scatter at a bunch of orphaned politics, all of which have nothing to do with a Green New Deal. Not one of them has anything to do with empowering a Green New Deal. I see some good folks fighting for single payer. July 24th, I'll be in the nation's capital with John Conyers and Ro Khanna and others like Bev Cowling, thank you, Bev, and Michael Rushnack, Dr. Michael Rushnack, and others who will be speaking for single payer. Now, folks, I got to tell you, that bill is not a bill that I would normally support by itself because it is still funded in the same moronic way that all the other things happen in this country, all the same lies that prevent us from having a massive New Deal. We keep looking at it one little thing at a time because we can't think big. We refuse to think big. We refuse to address all the problems, and we allow people to die because our imaginations are too small. And that is disgusting and is very sad to me. But the bottom line here is this. I'm going to continue pushing there. I'm going to go into Republican areas as well. I'm going to go wherever there are people with common sense, where there are ever anybody that is willing to give me an ear. I don't care if it's 3 people in a room. I don't care if it's 2 people. I'm going to talk, and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to continue to present this information, and I'm going to continue to fight tooth and nail for this. I am not giving up, and I am asking every one of you, please volunteer, sign up on our sign-up sheet on our page. If you go to our page, sign up. Help us activate, folks. I am done suffering. I am done being tuned out. I am done being patted on the back and patronized. I am done with people ignoring this. I am done suffering needlessly. And I don't want my kids to inherit this. And I am so bitter that my father died of a disease that if we would have been spending, they could have freaking found the cure for that shit. But they chose not to, because it's more important that the wealthy stay wealthy and that we sit here fighting for crumbs under the idea that somehow or another inflation's going to get us and we're all going to die. I am done with it. I'm sick of it. I am so over it. And I am done with people that are easily distracted with Trump's comb-over shit. Anyone that calls him Cheeto and Chief, I don't have time for that. I find that revolting and repulsive and moronic. There is such a need for us to get motivated to fight. I mean, fight like you wouldn't believe. And it needs to be party independent. Fuck the system. If you want to really be a revolutionary, we are literally telling the rich, you are irrelevant and we are going to do it with or without you. That's what I'm talking about. That's real revolution. This bullshit patty cake game where, yeah, we want a Green New Deal, but before we do it, we got to end the Fed. We got to green the dollar. We got to tear the system down. We got to destroy the bourgeoisie. We got to, democratize the workplace. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to do it. And then yes, after we've seized the means of production, then yeah, let's go ahead and do a New Deal. Why not? That's not going to get it done. That's not going to get it done. And so for my friends who are Green Party people, I'm with you in solidarity. I'm telling you to take the coup inside that party. Take the coup up to the top and let them know flat out, you're not letting them get away with it. You're not going to go with this AMI bullshit that sets so many barriers in way for you to live life more fully. You're not going to let them throw a bunch of barriers in place that prevent us from solving green energy. And you are certainly not going to let any more kids run around the planet with student debt hanging on their back like Quasimodo. You are going to freaking stand tall and fight. And that means you need to speak truth to power, even in the Green Party. That means you need to speak truth to power, even in the Democratic Party. When you see these vote blue sycophants running around telling you, just listen to Bernie. I love Bernie, but guess what? If Bernie lies, you fucking stick it to him. You don't let him get away with it. You do not let them get away with it. And if you see any of these other independent parties coming up, some of the ones, even the ones I support, like the Progressive Independent Party or Draft Bernie, if you don't see them staunchly fighting for a New Deal, if you don't see them staunchly fighting for this, challenge the leadership. Challenge every single person that doesn't do it, folks. There is no time to allow people to continue to die because people haven't taken the time to do the research, because people haven't taken an interest in understanding. There's no chance of getting any of this done unless we understand that. And that means irregardless of how the elections are done, it doesn't matter. If we bond together and rise together and fight and demand, watch how quickly people respond when they realize that we know what they're doing and we aren't going to take it any fucking more. Folks, this is what I'm talking about. If this is what you're about, then you're part of my homies. You're part of my team. You're part of my family. If that's not what you're a part, I get it. We all have our own things. Knock yourself out. Go chase after a cult of personality. Start fighting with another media person. Start writing stories about this, that, and the other. Nothing gets done about it. No one's life is saved by it. No planetary issues are solved. We all know we need green energy. So guess what? Yeah, we got another example of it over here. Yeah, we got another example of it over here. Another example, another example, another example. Big fucking deal. What is the solution? It is to convert to green energy now. It is to get rid of these things now. And the way we do that is to federally fund it now and stop playing patty cake. Miss Mary Mac. That's what these people are doing. And it's so disrespectful to people that actually understand this shit. It is absolutely the epitome of disrespect when people play patty cake with you and pat you on the head and patronize you and let you think that they're on the same team. But the reality is they're not fighting for a New Deal. They're not. They don't care. They do not care about a New Deal. And I'm telling you right now, we need a New Deal. We are within breaths of another monster recession. I'm already watching layoffs occur in other places. I'm watching different pinching go on. I'm watching state governments run out of money, so they're looking at how they can cut corners. It's always human beings. Folks, get serious or this shit's going to take us down. I am so done with it. I am over the milquetoast waffling. I am done with the people that equivocate and don't understand economics. They go, well, some people have this idea and some people have this idea and it's just a bunch of opinions. Fuck you. No, that's not true. It isn't just a bunch of opinions. This is fact. And this is going to save lives if we demand it saves lives. But if we keep allowing the slow kids to take us down because they're louder, they're more personable, they're more exciting, they're more fun, if we keep allowing people that don't focus on the issues to keep leading us by the nose about Cheeto and Chief and all the other nonsense, if we keep allowing that, got nobody to blame but ourselves. Nobody to blame but ourselves. Time is of the essence. Do you think when they start parading Tulsi Gabbard around, do you think Tulsi's going to come out and say the federal government has no constraints on spending other than real resources? Do you think she's going to say that? My bet is no, she's not. Why is that? Because our movement is full of sycophants. Our movement is full of adulation and hero worship. They don't bother to learn. They just want to, I want to follow you, Tulsi. God, you look good on the surfboard, Tulsi. You're so smart about foreign policy. You're really, really cool. Thank you for standing up to the Democrats. But what is your economic policy, Tulsi? Do you know that the government can never go broke? Do you know that we can afford a New Deal in one fell swoop? Do you know that it's worth fighting to disrobe this nonsense so that we as a nation can stop lying about the federal debt and reducing the deficit and all the other bullshit? Do you know that it's time for us to freaking rid ourselves of this fraudulent debt ceiling? Folks, if you are not paying attention, the GOP will push a goddamn balanced budget amendment right down your throat. And guess what? There is a dumb Democrat in Florida right now who is pushing a balanced budget amendment. So if you thought that it was just the GOP, think again. It's a bipartisan screw job to the 99%. And guess what they do? They say, well, if your people can't spend money, then why should the federal government? Because they're peddling the lie that taxes fund spending. See what I mean? Do you understand why this concept is so vital? When you understand that that is the key cog to these bozos' manipulation over us, our minds, and our willingness to move forward, then you begin to realize how vital this information is. But it's only when you realize that they're using it as a tool against us that you finally wake the fuck up. If you don't get this stuff, do not parade yourself as woke as fuck. I'm not joking. You're not woke. If you don't get this part, you're not woke. You're just running around peddling the oppressor's narrative yet again. Oh, and the worst part, and this might be even worse than what the oppressors are doing to us. The fact is that some people, since they don't understand the economics, rather than taking the time to learn or just get the basics, hey gang, we can't go broke, let's go for it. Rather than just getting the basics, they would rather burn the system down. Fuck it, we'll burn it all down. Take it down. Because they don't know any better. So rather than admit they're ignorant, they have to burn it down. And they won't help because they can't understand it, so they don't get behind it. So they sit there and act really cool and say, well, you know, man, we should just go ahead and take to the woods and live minimalist life and sing around the fire and fuck everybody. That right there is LOL libertarian anarchist logic. And I'm telling you, the people that can't survive don't survive. We need to build a society that protects even the most totally incapable of caring for themselves. We need a society that takes care of everyone. And we can do it. We can bloody well do it. And ignorance should not be the reason why it doesn't get done. Laziness should not be why it doesn't get done. I am at my tipping point, folks. I'm a man without a country right now. I have no allegiance to any party. I am 100% looking for anyone that pays attention to truth and actually wants to change the world. For those folks that are eagerly just chasing after the next freaking politician that they can suck on, you know what? You're doing yourself no favors, and you're absolutely not helping the country. Don't fool yourself. Do not fool yourself that hero worship and creating great memes about your next presidential candidate is somehow or another advancing the ball. It's not. It's not. They need to know, whoever's in charge, that we will not be lied to anymore and that we are ready to stand and fight. So, how did I feel like the Green Party annual meeting went? It kind of broke my heart. It kind of broke my heart. I really, really thought that leadership would attend, because I really took a lot of time to try and make this thing work. Because quite frankly, their addiction to American Monetary Institute, ending the fractional reserve system that doesn't exist, etc., is completely foobar. And it does not get you a Green New Deal. And if you ask them point blank to break down the process by which they get to a Green New Deal while ending the Fed, friggin' doing all the greening of the dollar and all the other nonsense that goes with it, at what point in time do we save our first life? At what point in time do we actually have a New Deal? Am I still alive? I'm only 48. Are we talking about 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years from now? When are we talking about getting a New Deal? See, I want a New Deal now. I don't think that's exactly what they're fighting for. I don't know if they have a coherent, unified message that shows how these things layer on top of each other, okay? I'm a project manager, so I'm looking for dependencies. I'm looking for key milestones, and I'm seeing a bunch of orphan politics, none of which have a coherent economic message for how they get delivered. And that, my friends, is a serious no bueno. This movement without economics gets nowhere but a great party. We all hang out and say, yay, fist in the air. But that is not progress. That is not progress. So I'm not giving up. I care about those people immensely. They just really broke my heart. There was a lack of respect for all the effort trying to get there. I was the only one talking about MMT. So knowing that one session was going on, it was only an hour. Nobody would have been worse off for going, but yet they didn't go. So there you have it, friends. That's my assessment. I hope that their weekend is successful. I hope those MMTers that are still remaining are pulling the weight and throwing it up at them and telling them, hey guys, we need a New Deal. But they are really, really steeped in a lot of moralizing and a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas and a lot of religious thinking and not actual policy space that advances a Green New Deal. With that, I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives, and I hope to God they wake up, because I want them to be successful. I'm out. Have a good night, everybody.